Hello, and welcome back to the Misty Morrison Podcast. I'm your host, Misty Morrison, and this is episode 61 of Petty Please. Here on the Misty Morrison Podcast, we love to read or listen. We love all the stories of pettiness, revenge, entitlement, bad bosses, bad neighbors, all the things. And stories of revenge, too. And we like to be grateful that those are not our stories. Before we get into our stories for the day, our usual housekeeping, whether you are new or returning, please remember to engage with the content to help the channel grow. Every little bit of online engagement is free, and it can really help me grow my dream. Long-form content goes live every Tuesday and Thursday on podcast and YouTube. Short-form content goes live 3 times daily across YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. I skipped a part. Back to the engagement. Leave a comment with your thoughts on stories down below. Give it a like, a heart, a thumbs up if you liked it. Share it with a friend. Subscribe for more. And hit the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. Okay, we are here for round 2 in the hotel in Decatur. So my plan, my intention, the best laid plans, was to take advantage of being gone and record 2 episodes last night and 2 episodes tonight. That's not what happened. Last night when I recorded, was I in the wrong? I was so tired and exhausted. I just felt like my whole body was crawling. So I did 1 episode. I hope it turned out okay and called it a night. It was 1:30 in the morning when I went to bed. And I had 3 hours of sleep the night before. So right now, worked all day, took off, went and did some shopping, got my nails done, went and ate a very nice dinner. But then I came back and had to clock back in and do some more work for like an hour and a half. So now it is just shy of midnight. So we're looking at the same timeline again tonight. So we are just going to do 1 episode tonight, and that's okay. When I am at the house, I normally only record 2 episodes a week anyway, and then I edit throughout the week. So this is okay. I didn't meet the goal, but I met the minimum, so I'm still proud of me. It's okay. All right, into our stories for the day. Story number 1 is coming to us from r/pro revenge. I used theatrics to spite my bully. He was pretty dramatic about the whole thing. TLDR at the bottom. Prelude. When I was a young man of just 18, I got a job in the Canadian oil patch. It was my first real job. It was the early 2000s, and this paid $20 an hour with no experience or education required. Wow. Minimum wage was sub $6. It was called well testing. Basically, you hook up a closed pressure tank and flare stack to new oil and gas wells. Then flow them, gather data for the oil barons. It's hard work setting up and tearing down, but the rest is recording gauges and computer work. Not bad for a first job. Except for effing Gary. You work 2-man 12-hour or 4-man 24-hour crews. 1 laborer and 1 supervisor a shift. I was paired with a mean-spirited alcoholic in his mid-50s named Gary. He was overweight and lazy, only helping with things too heavy to lift on my own, like 250-pound pipes. He spent his days in the trailer, for the most part anyway, watching DVDs, napping, and hourly typing a bit of data into a PC. He also liked picking on me with jokes, read insults. I'm not a small man, about 6'1" in heels. He was noticeably smaller, yet while not physically intimidated, back then I lacked confidence and have a baby face. I got called stupid a lot. When he found out I had never used a power drill, he asked me, "Did your dad teach you anything?" I made the error of telling him my dad was only in my life a handful of years. The next time I made a mistake, he quipped, "No wonder my dad walked out on me." I did call him out on that. Like every other asshole alive, he'd tell me I couldn't take a joke. We always worked far out of town in the country. I often had to eat dinner with him in small town restaurants, mostly bars, if we could help it. He drank a lot, could actually be personable when not at work, and he was at least too deep. He didn't stop and drank every night. It quickly became the case that I drove us to work in his truck. He made $1.10 per kilometer, and we could drive 100 to 350 kilometers per day, every day for weeks. 100 miles equals 160 kilometers, FYI. I got minimum wage for travel time. He was hungover most mornings, didn't want to drive, and told me he was boss. He slept like a gin-bloated corpse until we got to work. I worked with him for 3 months. 3 months of demeaning treatment and verbal abuse. I don't react much. It's still true everyone has their breaking point. I was very used to bullying by then. Long story, I just got silent. I also needed the job. I don't anything until I do, and I don't do nothing. I don't do anything until I do, and I don't do nothing forever. Part 1. Oh, this is a long one. Part 1. The Power of Love. The first step in my quest for vengeance was remembering that it's impossible to defeat evil without the power of love. Part 2. The Power of Terror. One night, while we were out of town on a job during dinner, I mentioned to Gary it's pretty lame he sleeps most of the time while I drive his truck and he gets paid. Maybe he ought to kick a few bucks my way for the effort. He didn't like my suggestion. He be generous. The last hinge must have crumbled because he came unglued. More verbal abuse, and I was young. It actually reduced me to angry tears. When he threatened my job, it was a bad feeling, so I resolved to at least get away from him. I'd been taking notes because I wanted a different crew anyway. My breaking point was achieved. This is usually when my instinct for self-preservation diminishes and impulsive thoughts have fewer safeguards. Oh boy. I wanted to go home. Not revenge, but serendipity delivered the next morning. Gary was once again in his travel coma, and I drove us to work. About 30 kilometers from side of the highway on a pullout was a semi-truck. Luck would have it, it was running and trucker was outside his rig. I quickly formulated a plan. Gary always needed to be woken with intent, so he didn't stir when I stopped. I got out and asked the friendly driver for a favor. Trucker man agreed to my terms, got back in his semi to await the signal. Gary, blissfully sleeping off the last of his nightly whiskey, also failed to notice when I maneuvered his truck, parking it. We were nearly bumper to bumper, facing the big, beautiful Peterbilt. I love where this is going. I lit the beacon. The truckers of Rohan answered with their own headlights. Like the horn of Helm Hammerhead sounding in the deep, the trucker hit his air horn with amazing commitment to instilling fear. I did my part by honking Gary's truck gleefully in respite and screaming my ass off. I cried bloody murder at blast level and yelled, "F, we're gonna die!" Striking like a battalion of bombers singing a chorus of fire, the glorious cacophony lasted less than a minute. Okay, the writing has improved substantially. When it hit him, Gary dented the ceiling. Good thing he's thick as cement, or that might have hurt. He rocketed up with such force because the amount of shit he rapidly expelled into his pants kept him in debt to his own bowels until retirement. The wonderful sound of his anguished howls segued quickly into apoplexy and rage. While coming to terms with what I had done, he couldn't correctly choke out his death threats. I reversed, peeled off before he decided to get out and to make good, and gave the trucker a wave. I got about 10 meters down the road when Gary felt the need to tell me he had dangerously high blood pressure and I could have killed him with a stroke. About 4 years later, I went to paramedic school, so yes, in hindsight, I agree with his assessment. Sucks for him. At 18, I had legitimately no idea what a stroke was. What would I even do? Probably ignore him like they did with Stalin. I'd think he was just extra hungover or being lazier than usual by pretending half his body was paralyzed. Dead. I started laughing and told him he should probably calm down then. I said, "Can't you take a joke?" He kept making incomplete threats and I just couldn't stop laughing, making it even funnier when he wouldn't shut up. Don't feed it, Gary. I love ugly laughing at angry people. I was a hyena. He was fighting the urge to kill me and the desire to not stroke out simultaneously. The struggle was real. It took about 20 minutes more to get to site. That dance continued the whole time. I even asked him if that was his normal shade of red. Arriving, he ordered me to get out, said I was fired, then stomped off to go call the company owner. Whatever. I had intermittent chuckles and smoked cigarettes while savoring my Pyrrhic victory for the 4 hours it took the company owner to come pick me up. It was a medium-sized business, about 100 employees. He was a general manager as well. I got some details. Gary wanted to involve the cops for attempted murder. Boss dissuaded him. Gary told one hell of a tale that left me looking like Satan. So I told him all about the necessity of Gary's punishment on the way back to the city. He had a good chuckle about it. He was actually a decent guy. I worked for him until I went back to school. I got moved to a different crew where I could be the lone sociopath. That's about it. I did get some street cred with the rest of the boys of the company. TLDR, I tricked my work bully into thinking he was dying in a motor vehicle collision with a semi-truck. That was so good. At first I was like, oh, the writing could be better, but you were just saving it. You were just saving all the good for part 2, and boy, did it come through. That was good. I enjoyed that so much. Good job. Good job, and Gary deserved it. Okay. Story number 2 is coming to us from r/revenge stories. Karma biting back. It is not petty revenge from me, but more of a karma being a fickle bitch. I worked for a call center for a major wholesale company. So picture seas of cubicles. There was a girl there, and I say girl because she was like 18 and I was in my later 30s. I'm a large woman, always have been, definitely plus-sized. We sat kind of near to each other since we were both in the email department. I would stop on my way to work from time to time to get a McDonald's breakfast, a sausage egg McMuffin meal. This detail is irrelevant to the story. I am a very friendly person. I was never mean to her. I even took her a donut that she mentioned to me because it was from a store close to me. Her and the person I thought was my best friend used to talk smack about me, calling me fat and how I scarf down McGriddles. I hate McGriddles. Every morning, blah, blah, blah. A newer manager overheard them talking smack and she confronted my friend, told him he was not my friend. She actually pulled me into a meeting to talk to me about it, making sure I was okay. They moved our section. I was sat next to the little whiny twit next to me. She tweeted, like, my life doesn't suck enough, but work moves me next to the 600-pound woman who never shuts up. What does my weight have to do with it, lol? Someone told me about it and I went to HR and they protected her. I understood for the most part. People can post anything they want, but everyone from work could see it and knew who she was talking about. They separated us. I kept clear of her. About 2 months later, a professional football player called in to adjust his membership. She tweeted about him calling in and said the reason for the call even. And she tagged the star in the tweet. Can you say breach of privacy? The PR for said star got a hold of the CEO of the company. This company happens to be based in the state of the team. She got canned. She got fired for using the same platform she used to bully me. So in my opinion, karma had my back. She also had a child and got to be bigger than I was back then. Not judging, just kind of made me chuckle. Yeah, just based on the initial tweets, it's not at all surprising that she eventually did this with the privacy breach. It's wild to me the way people will post on social media and not even think about how that affects your job. Oh well. Story number 3 is coming to us from r/malicious compliance. You want me to switch classes mid-semester? Fine. In every university in my country, and probably most other countries, there are mandatory subjects everyone has to take regardless of their major. My friends and I are mass communication majors for reference. About 2 weeks before the semester started, we registered for classes and were allowed to choose which faculty section of the mandatory subject we wanted. Since the syllabus was identical across faculties, we picked the management faculty's Monday 6 to 8 p.m. class instead of the mass comms faculty's 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. class on Fridays, because it fit our schedules better. I work part-time on weekends and whenever else I can squeeze in any shifts. So the Friday morning slot was rough since I had a 2-hour travel time to head back home before work. And this wasn't my first rodeo either. I'd been in mandatory classes that were in a different faculty section 2 or 3 times over the past 2 years, and I've been in university with no issues. Then, in week 4 of the semester, our lecturer, Mrs. N, suddenly emailed my friends and I saying she just found out that we supposedly weren't allowed to be in her class and had to switch back to our own faculty section. Confused, we went on a full wild goose chase between 2 different departments. First, the division handling mandatory subjects, then the mass comm faculty admin. When we finally met the admin officer, she was super rude and condescending. She even called us selfish, kept interrupting us, refused to explain anything properly, and just kept repeating, you just can't, when we asked her anything. She'd also ask us questions like, why would you choose another faculty's class? But every time I tried to answer, she'd cut me off mid-sentence. At that point, I realized what she was doing. She was just to wear us down until we gave up. Honestly speaking, if she had been polite, I probably would have relented. But she was so unnecessarily rude that I dug my heels in out of pure spite. Eventually, I cut in and calmly said, ma'am, you've asked us several questions without letting us answer, and you haven't answered ours either. We're willing to comply, but we'd like to understand why we're being asked to switch classes in week 4, and whether there's another option, since this schedule accommodates us better. That actually made her stop cutting me off. When she regained composure, she snapped, it messes up the end of semester report. You students should manage your schedules better. This was their way of managing their schedules, taking the class that worked best. And I replied, I thought university was supposed to accommodate students from different circumstances. I work part-time, for example. She huffed and switched to this fake sweet tone and said, fine, email your lecturer and see if she agrees to let you stay. But if she says no, you come back here, drop the class, and register for your own faculty section, okay? Okay. I just smiled, held back how pissed I was with how she was treating me and my friends, and said, okay, thank you. And we all left. So we emailed the lecturer and CC'd the admins. Mrs. N replied saying she had no issue with us staying in the class. The admin, despite literally saying she'd allow it if the lecturer agreed, suddenly responded with a long explanation about why we still shouldn't stay. That's when I pulled my final move. I contacted the lecturer teaching the mass comm section, Mrs. Z. Miss Z and I are close. I helped her a lot over the past 2 semesters since I met her during the middle of my first year, and she's always been really supportive of me. I messaged her personally to let her know I might be joining her Friday class, and she was immediately confused because she thought I was staying in the management class section. So I explained everything to her, and she was absolutely appalled and told me that apparently the system auto-collects grades across all divisions regardless of the student's majors, so it doesn't affect the report in any way. The admin was basically lying, and apparently the only reason why she wanted me and my friends to switch classes was due to a few students from Miss Z's class who requested to switch to Miss N's class, because Miss Z's class was too early for them, but they requested after the 3rd week, which wasn't allowed anyway. Then she told me that, as a lecturer, she had to approve any new students registering for her class, and because of what happened and how it happened, she promised that she wouldn't approve my transfer. No approval, no class switch. To make it even better, she doubled down and personally told the admin that she didn't want additional students in her class and to let us stay in our current class since it was reaching the 5th week and nearing the deadline for our first assignment. So we had a very valid reason to stay. Sucks to suck, admin. And then there's a TLDR posted at the bottom. That's good. She told you to talk to the lecturer. You did. You went out, you put in the work, you got all the information for all the different areas that you could need, and you came out on top. As you should have. The admin was being ridiculous. It probably sounds like the people that wanted in that class that she's trying to get rid of you for were probably her friends or someone she had connections to. So that makes it more messed up. But you did phenomenally in winning your case. So I want to see if we can read one palette cleanser before we leave for the day. Okay, this is a good short one, and I read the title and really wanted to read this one. Story number 4 is coming to us from r/Random Acts of Kindness. My friend gave brownies to a homeless man, and it changed my perspective. Back when I was in college, I used to play a weekly game of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, in a dorm a few blocks away from mine. I went to college in a big city with no real campus aside from the city itself. Since our D&D games ended late and we had to walk through a sketchy area, those of us in my dorm building always walked back in a group. On one of those nights, one of my D&D friends walking with us had made brownies. He'd made way too many for the small group of us to finish. And while we walked, we passed a homeless man. My friend stopped and offered the man all of the leftover brownies in the tray, which was around 8 to 10. The man was so excited. We could tell this had made his night. I think about this moment whenever I see someone struggling to make ends meet, and it's inspired me to buy several meals for people in need over the years. One small act of kindness changed my outlook on what I can do for strangers I pass by. I love that one. That was as good as I expected it to be. Okay, that is 4 stories for this week's episode of Petty Please. Thank you so much for being here for another episode of the Misty Morrison Podcast. Remember, start each day with a grateful heart. Kindness changes everything. And now that it is 12:15 in the morning, I am logging off for the night. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.